Good morning, sir. Today I'm going to recite the 100 definition of terms of this subject for final examination. So let's start. First, we have the release of the crime scene. Release of the crime scene is done if the investigator is satisfied that all pieces and evidence has been recovered and he must bear in the mind of upon of the release of the crime scene to the property of authority, and the warrant is already required for his re-entry to the crime scene. Conduct of final survey. Um, the team leader makes final review on the crime scene to determine whether or not the processing has been completed. And we have the procedures needed for the care of the physical evidence. In order to introduce physical evidence in court, we have must three important factors must be considered. The article must be properly identified, chain of custody must be proved, and the evidence must be material and relevant. Chain of custody or possession is the number person um, who handle and possess the pieces of the evidence the moment they were collected and marked and tagged upon the time of the final disposition of the case. As a rule of seized evidence must be in the custody of the evidence custodian and deposited in the evidence room. Tagging of evidence, it is done through the movable object wherein marking on any of its surface it's not possible. Tag must contain the marking and other information about the specimen. Preservation of evidence. It is the investigator's responsibility to ensure that the every prosecution is exercised preserve physical evidence in the state in which it was obtained or recovered until it released to the evidence custodian. Collection of evidence. This is the accomplished after the research or completed rough sketch and the finished or photographs taken. It's fragile evidence that should be collected as they found all firearms found have the untempered serial numbers or shall be automatically subjected to macro etching and PNP crime laboratory. Tapos a corresponding request to the firearms and explosive office must be made for the verification of the purposes. Ano next? Marking of evidence and any physical evidence that obtain must be marked tag before its submission the evidence custodians the investigator places his initials that are the date and time of the discovery of each item evidence of the proper identification in marking of the specimen. Strip search method. This kind of method, the area is blocked out of the form of the rectangle. The three searchers and A, B, and C proceed slowly at the same pace along paths parallel of the side of the rectangle. When the pieces of evidence found in the finder of announces discovery that the search must stop until the evidence has been cared for. Next is the double strip search method. The double strip grip method is the three searchers follow each other along the path of spiral beginning of the spiraling toward the center. Zone search method or the quadrant or sector. In this method, In this method of the one search assigned to each subdivision of quadrant, and then each quadrant is cut into another set of quadrants. Will search method. In this method, search the area is considered to be approximately circular. The researchers gather at the center of the proceed of the outward point to point. Search will stand a straight line and move forward together. In triangulation method, an object is located drawing to straight lines from fixed point, creating triangle. The object is angle formed by the line. The sketching method requires measuring distance of an object along straight line from two widely separated fixed from the reference point. Rectangular method. This method used two walls in a room fixed point from which distance and measured at right angle to object. Baseline or coordinate method. A sketching method that makes measurements along from single reference line called baseline, which can be established by using length of string or chalk line and some other convenient means. Um, um, Compass point method. Sketching method is that requires a protract protractor as a method measuring angles between two lines. Next? Ano na? Two line. Sketching method requires protractor of some method measuring angles between two lines. And one point is selected as the origin of the line, extending from the origin becomes an axis from which angles can be measured. Cross projection method. Sketching method in which the ceiling appears to open like a lid high box with the four walls opening outward, and measurements are then indicated from point of the floor to the wall. Polar coordinates. This method requires two people of hold each and tape measure. This is the best suited for large pen areas where there might not be any reference point by using handheld GPS or the global positioning system. Next, the sketch locality gives picture of the scene, the crime, and its environs, including the neighboring building roads. Next is the sketch of the ground or floor plan and overview. Picture of the scene of the crime with the nearest physical surrounding. And next. Sketch in details. This the immediate scene only. Exploded or cross projection gives the clear impression of the crime scene in case where blood stains or bullet holes are found. Next, we have the elements of sketch: measurement, compass direction, essential of items, scale and proportion, legend and title, and we have the rough sketch. It is made by the investigator at the crime scene, which is full of important details but without scale of proportion. Basis for the finished sketch, and it is the first pencil drawn outline the scene and the location of object evidence, um, it is outlined. Next is the finished sketch. It is often drawn by the draftsman to show proper relationships and skills that the finished sketch is more presentable for court presentations. Next is we have the crime scene sketch. It is a graphic representation of the crime scene which complete measurement uh, relative distance of relevant object and condition obtaining therein. Uh, Next we have the general view or long range photograph of the overall crime scenes, and it will depict the location of the crime scene. This stems from doorway to the room and other corners of the room. Next, we have the ano, um, we have the mid-range photograph shows the nature of the crime scene at the distance of 8 or 8 8 or to 10 feet from the 8 or 10 feet from the victim. Next, we have the close-up photograph that show details the crime scene distance 5 feet or less from the subject or object. Guidelines for taking for photograph of the crime scene. Photograph should be taken soon as possible before the note-taking and sketching of search for evidence evidence begins. Um, it must show the original uncontaminated condition of the crime scene. We have the photograph. The crime scene only should be taken without the inspectors or police personnels. It must be coordinated sequence and show out of the relevant location and object. It must be taken from the general specific. In crime scene photography, it is conducted to create an inaccurate object, visual and permanent record of the crime scene before any items move or remove the possible physical evidence. Um, it is recommended to take as many photographs as you can, be giving emphasis to possible physical evidences. And we have the next one. The four priorities of the FRs upon arrival of the crime scene. To give first aid or try to save life if possible, and to apprehend the suspect offender, to protect if necessary, collect and preserve evidence, to cordon off, to protect the area of investigation. Corpus delicti is the body of the crime or fact specific loss or injury sustained. Uh, Constitutions that essential parts of elements in the commission of the crime scene. Assistive evidence. These are the pieces of evidence that will link the suspect to the crime scene. That suspect may leave some clues, some clues at the scene as weapon as weapon tools of the garments. Death from asapia is the condition which the supply of the blood or the tissues of both has been reduced below normal working level. Death from coma, it is state of the consciousness with instability of the pupil and conjunctive inability to swallow, the resulting from the arrest of the function of the brain. Death from starvation of initiation, it is the deprivation of regular and constant supply of food, water, which is necessary to normal health of a person. Next? Acute starvation. It is when necessary food has been suddenly and completely withheld form of person. Chronic starvation is when it's the gradual or deficient supply of food, mm, wound brought about by blunt instrument, wood brought about by sharp instrument, wood brought about by tearing force, wood brought about by involving uh, wood brought by change of atmospheric, wound brought by heat or cold, wound brought about by chemical explosions. Um, next, ano yun? Mm, Superficial when the wound involves of the layers of the skin. Deep when the wound involves the inner structures beyond the layers of the skin. And we have the penetrating, which the wounding agent enters the body but did not come from the mere piercing of the organ or tissue of the body. Um, Perforating when the wounding agents communicating between the inner and outer portions, a point of entry exit instruments. Cooling of the body 2 hours after death. 2 hours after death, kinetic rigidity of the death struggle of muscles of rigor mortis. The whole the whole body becomes rigid due to the reconstruction of muscles. This developed to 3 to 6 hours, or 3 to 6 hours, 3 to 6 hours after death, and may last from the last from the um last from 24 to 36 hours. uh, Coagulation in the past post, in the blood post, mortem lividity, or the cadaveric lividity, or the postmortem uh, segregation, or postmortem hypothesis, or the labor mortis. uh, Putrefaction, decay of the muscles, become blood flaccid, no longer capable of the responding of the blood, responding of the mechanical electrical stimulus, and the reaction becomes alkaline. Azonia is the higher altitude of the oxygen which content the atmosphere becomes lesser and lesser. Cope injury, which is located at the site of the application of force. Cope injury, physical, found opposite the site of the application force. Cope injury, injury that located at the side of, also opposite the side of the application of force. Locus minoris resistentia, physical injury located not at the site or nor opposite at the site of the application of force, but in some areas offering the at the least resistance of the force. Extensive injury involving a greater area of the body beyond outside of the application force. Mortal wound cause immediately alter infections of the shortly thereafter, that is capable of causing death. Special crime investigation, that's the investigation of the cases that are unique and often require special training to fully understand the breadth of significance. The homicide, robbery, rape, and sexual offense, kidnapping, carnapping, bomb threat, and explosions, illegal recruitment, and terrorist activities that are examples of the cases that call our special crime investigation. Next is the carnapping. Carnapping is taken with the intent to gain or motor vehicle belonging to another without the latter of consent by means violence against the intimidation of the persons by using force upon things. Ano yung susunod? Kidnap for ransom. It is criminal act particularly described as the unlawful taking and carrying the uh, carrying away person by force or fraud against his will or any manner that payments for release, kidnap, or ransom of common terms in use describe the specific payments of for his release. That kidnap for ransom is common term used to describe criminal act punishable by under the article 267 or 267 of the RPC entitled kidnapping and serious physical serious illegal detention. Next we have the ransom is the money price that the consideration of pay demanded for the redemption of the captured person's payment in the release of the captivity. Organized crime is the crime of the conjures of the image of single large scale and secret that criminal organization, although the term is usually associated with the well-known and criminal syndicate. It is also describe many of the crimes organization with similar criminal characteristic. Computer hacking. It is most favorable use. The term of computer hacking signifies limits regardless of consequences. In reality, it involved the destruction of the valuable data resulting in massive cost. Crime mappings. In crime mapping allows the general public, the community to view, update, and crime incidents with the region. The information ano susunod? The information of the information provided online is limited. The basic attributes the crime does not expose the victim identity or the suspect. Crime mapping, it is a very important tool in managing and controlling crime in area. And by analyzing the special temporal data provided by the maps, investigators are able to understand the crime patterns and trend. It also helps the resources location and the geographic criminal suspicions. Legal medicines is the branch of the medicine which deals the application of medical knowledge to purpose laws in administration of justice. Forensic medicine concerns with the application of medical science to elucidate the legal problems. Physician who specializes or involved primarily with the medical legal duties is known as the medical jurist. We have the Epihotep, earliest the recorded medical legal experts. Hippocrates discussed the later wounds. Antististus, the first police surgeon or forensic pathologist. We have the Paulus Saccas, a papal physician, regarded the father of forensic medicine. Orfila introduced the chemical methods in toxicology. Low multiplicity of evidence identification. The greater the number of points of similarities, dissimilarities of two persons compared, the greater of the greater probability of the conclusion to be correct. This is known as death or death is the termination of life. It is complete cessation of the vital functions without the possibility of resurrection. Ay, ano? Recitation. It is reversible loss of the properties of living matter. Um, Next, we have the schematic death or the clinical death. Clinical death. It is the state of the body which there is complete, persistent or continuous cessation of the vital functions of the brain, heart, lungs, which maintains the life of death. Muscular or cellular death is evidenced by the presence of the muscles and ciliary movement and other functions of individual cells. About 3 to 6 hours later, there is death of individual cells. Ano na susunod doon? Autopsy. Autopsy is the comprehensive study of dead body performed by the trained physician, employing recognize the distinction of procedures of techniques. Physician. Post-mortem examination refers of external examination of dead body without incision being made, although the blood and other body fluids may be collected for examination. Next, we have the cause of death. In cause of death, it is the injury of a combination of body injuries, disease that the responsible for initiating the trend of physical disturbance, brief of prolong, which precedes the fatal termination. And we have the last one of the death from the syncope due to sudden fatal sensations of the action of the heart with the circulation included. That's all. That's all, sir. Thank you.